Okay.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I am Susan Wargaftic, and I am sure there will be other people who will be joining us as time goes along, but we wanted to start. We try to respect people's time. So this is part 2 of our GA, and what we're going to be talking about are 2 issues, and then we can open it up for other things if we have time. This will go from no later than 8:30, and that's up to us to decide. We're going to be talking about issues around the post office, um, whether we want to have any actions around that, also vote by mail, those kinds of things. And the second piece we're going to be talking about is austerity, with the understanding that there's been a lot of money spent, not that there couldn't be more, but that we're going to start getting pushback from the right wing. Oh my God, all those undeserving people have been spending too much money. It's now time for us to pull in the reins and let's just cut the schools or whatever. So we're going to have those 2 discussions, and then if there's anything else beyond that, we can move on that. Okay, does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up or something, or a wave or whatever. Okay, all right. A couple of things. If you want to ask questions, go into the chat and just write the question down, and I'll be monitoring the chat, and we'll try to bring those questions in. We try to have everybody muted so that when my dog starts to bark or whatever, that doesn't totally upend us. We are expecting that Jo Comerford may be joining us, but so far she has not. And
No, I'm here.
She's
Oh, you are here. Oh, you are here. Good. I hadn't seen that. Okay, my mistake. Yay. All right. So with that, we'd like to start talking about issues around post office, vote by mail, et cetera, et cetera. And since Jo is here, and we have some questions that we already started with, I'm going to start with those and with Jo, and then we can work from there. How's that? There are 2 questions. One is, what can we do? They're all connected. What can we do locally to ensure and safeguard a November election? What is the state doing regarding vote by mail? And all kinds of connections related to that. So I'm going to throw that one out to you, Jo.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for gathering. It's lovely to see your faces again. It's a gift. Thank you for your advocacy. So, you have succeeded, and many people like you across the Commonwealth have succeeded in ratcheting up the importance of vote by mail. So, as you know, there are a number of very good bills in the legislature. I myself am on the side of wanting a universal vote by mail, so that it's just universally acceptable, accessible, and put in place for everyone in the Commonwealth to break down all barriers. And there's quite a number of people, I think, in the House and the Senate who think that way. So, your advocacy, the bills are real, they're live, they're happening right now. And so your advocacy now to Senate leadership and House leadership is really where you should go. So Speaker DeLeo, Senate President, Mike Rodrigues, who's the Senate Ways and Means Chair, and Aaron Michaelwitz, the House Ways and Means Chair. And certainly you can go to the Joint Committee on Elections. In fact, I'll go get that link while we have this conversation, and can put the link there. And there's a number of different hybrids on the bill, but I think you don't have to necessarily know exactly which bill. You can just list your principles for what you'd like, which is, I know some of the I've seen emails from some of you on this already. So Senator Becca Rausch, I think, has a particularly strong bill, but she's not the only one.
Great. Any other questions around this? Let's see. Okay, so we have the question of a particular bill that you favor. Okay, David. Okay, so so Rebecca Rausch's bill is the one, is one that's really good. Are there any others we should know about?
There's a Moran bill. There's a Moran bill that has kicked up a lot of interest. I'll see if I can go find it. That's also a good bill. It's not as comprehensive as Senator Rausch, but like Senator Hines, Senator Lesser, and I are on it. Again, you know, in a moment like this, many bills are filed, as you know well,
Right.
and there can be 10 bills filed on the same issue. So in a moment like this, sometimes it's even better just to articulate your principles and get everybody saying the same, you know, get in that universal vote by mail,
Okay.
you know, bucket.
Right. Well, we have one question about what universal vote by mail means. So could you just give a description?
It means
I
access,
understand.
you know, access to a paper ballot for everyone. So not just, you know, not just expanding early vote, for example, or expanding absentee vote. There's lots of people talking about that as well. But I think in this moment, there, you know, the one school of thought is, let's just make this, you know, in light of a pandemic, in light of what we don't know is coming in the fall, in light of the importance, I think we'd all agree, on the strength of the November election, and needing to make sure that there's no reason that we would, for any reason, you know, scuttle it or think it not feasible or doubt its veracity. Let's just switch to something that's universally accessible.
Great.
Could I ask a question, a clarifying question about that? Hi, Joe.
Hi,
It's
dear.
Sharon. Does that mean that, for example, I got an absentee ballot. I can vote by mail here in my town during primary. Does that mean that the Secretary of State would send each person who's registered to vote in the state their ballot in the mail, and people could return it in the mail? That the secretary, it would be a statewide thing. It's a town thing right now, but is that how it would work, this universal?
Yes. Yes. Now there are numbers of iterations of this, so I don't want to prescribe for all the bills the exact mechanics, but that's the theory.
Okay.
The theory is that one person, one vote, and one person, one paper ballot. You know.
Joe, when do you think that there's going to be a vote on this coming up in the legislature? Just timing generally.
So here's the election committee. You know, these are late files, and so some of them are late files, not all, but some. And so they have a shorter process. And so many late files, there's some truism to late files in this COVID-19. One is it's taking a little while longer for these guys to get to committee. So sometimes when a bill is filed, then it waits in the clerk before the clerk says, okay, you go here. So it took a little while, and that's bad, because we don't want it to be not in committee, because you can't act on it if it's not in committee, because it's not real yet. It hasn't been admitted. So there was a lot of advocacy, as you know, to get these bills assigned to a committee, and that's a decision by leadership. Now that it's in committee, they've heard these bills, so they've already had a hearing. And of course, you know, I was out favorably. I sponsored a number of them, and now they need to move. Now they need to move fairly quickly on these, or they'll have to extend them again. And I don't think they want to extend them. So your swift action here to the committee and to leadership would be a good use of your time if you care about this issue.
Okay. Okay. Any other question about just the vote by mail question? Doug?
Yeah, I have two. One is there actually opposition to this within the state? Are there people, I assume Republicans, are there people who are resisting or that as an opposition? That's one question. And the second one is, are phone calls better than emails? What is the preferred way of contacting?
Emails now, because fewer people are in the State House for paper mail, and the State House phones are unevenly forwarded. So, for example, we're finding that that not all staff have forwarded their lines to their own cell phone or home phone.
Mhm.
My team has, right? So if you call the State House number, it'll get you back to a cell phone. But that doesn't always happen now.
Okay.
So, for example, I don't know, depending on who you call in the Senate President's office or the Speaker's office, they may not be getting your phone call in a reasonably quick way. So emails are the thing.
Okay.
Direct to their, here, I'll put Senate Presidents down for you.
Okay. And again, is there opposition within the state, or is it simply the mechanics of going through the process?
The Secretary of State, you could also email Bill Galvin and tell him. The Secretary of State, as you know, is change is hard for him. Change is hard. And so, what do you say? Sharon saying something funny, I bet. But so,
I was saying you're so diplomatic, Joe. I mean, you're great to have representing us, because man, I wouldn't have put it that way. But yeah, thank you.
No, it's a real thing, right? So he's another good target for you, Bill Galvin. He has actually moved some on this issue. So it's not that he's a complete blockade. So I think, emailing DeLeo Spilka, Bill Galvin, Michael Rodricks, and Aaron Michaelwitz are good uses of your time.
Thank you.
Joe, will the bills cover the primary or only in November, the election?
They do different things. The best of them go to the primary. And people are understanding that of course both the primary and the general are important, but if you had to choose, the general's the thing. But they should do both, because people should have the option to vote in a public health crisis.
Right.
And again, right now we probably could manage it. As we come out of this with good public health distance, and out here in Western Mass, we could figure it out probably, although it would be arduous, perhaps in long waiting lines, and potentially really hard for people who have vulnerable health. So, we'd want to solve for those folks by absentee voting. But this just takes all of those things out of it. It doesn't, we don't have to think about accessibility, because it's all about accessibility.
Right.
There's a question about ranked choice voting, and is that anywhere, or where is that?
Yep. So I am sorry to say that that has been extended. So that's been extended to June. That's not in this year. In any other year, that extension, which is one of the very last dates in a sort of normal year, the end of June, that would be a death knell. But because it's very, very likely this session will not follow the usual protocol of second year of a 2-year session, it means that we're going to go much further into August, September, October, just because all we've been doing, 24/7 is COVID, and we haven't done so many other things that we wanted to do this session. And so we're going to have to do them. And there's other things we just have to do, right? There are bond bills and budgets and supplemental budgets. Let alone the climate bill we will have to pass, and the transportation bill, and all these other things that I think voters would not be very pleased with if we didn't come home having done those. So we're just going to have to just do more formal sessions for a longer period. So this is me saying to you that if you care about ranked choice voting, and I know you do, and I do too, that advocacy is not over. There is still time to move that bill. For this, though, I might contact. Are you talking about the Vargas bill? Is this the bill that you're most interested in, the ranked choice? Anybody know?
Cooper Wood, you're the one who asked the question. You want to respond to that? Unmute yourself, though.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not up on who are these people. Vargas?
Andy Vargas.
I've been following the.
Andy Vargas. He's a good rep. He's a great guy. Honestly, I'm guessing that's the one that you're interested in. It's a good bill, and there's a Senate corollary which I'm pulling up now. But anyway, you could go on malegislature.gov. Here, I'm going to do this. And you could Google it and find the sponsors of the bills that you like. Let's see.
I think there are also ballot initiative papers being circulated, right? So, and they'll send you one by email that you can sign and send back. That's what I did.
Yeah. Okay, anything more on voting at this point? Okay. David Cohen wanted to talk about the post office.
So with all this talk about voting by mail, we're presuming that we have a post office that'll deliver all the ballots to everyone. And right now that the post office is in serious trouble. And I think we know, Trump and the Republicans have a huge list of things that they're trying to destroy and laws that they're trying to roll back on. But the post office has been one of the targets of the Republican Party for quite some time now, along with Social Security. And if you read their stuff, they hate it. Basically, they see it as socialist institutions. They're not being run for profit. So one of the things the Republicans did, and I have to say, they do plan ahead. In 2005, they passed legislation that said that the post office had to set aside enough money to pay for the health insurance of postal workers for 75 years in the future. So the post office pretty quickly went from being profitable, and it gets no money from the federal government, it runs itself. It went from being profitable to losing money because it has to set aside hundreds of millions of dollars for this phony idea that you can plan what healthcare will cost for the next 75 years. Some folks might remember they did the same thing around Social Security back in the 1990s. They passed a legislation that said that Social Security had to be solvent for 75 years in the future. And the problem is no one can predict what's going to be going on in the world in 75 years. So it became, they could declare disasters. Social Security was supposed to have run out of money in 2012, according to the Republicans, and it never did. But right now, the post office, so they have one problem. They have this setting aside hundreds of millions of dollars for health insurance for the future, which no other business in the United States has to do. The other thing is with the COVID-19 crisis, that the volume of mail has gone down dramatically. It's about 30% lower right now, which cuts into their revenues. And I think most of us are familiar with Naomi Klein's theory of disaster capitalism, that when disasters strike, they find a way to make a profit out of it and destroy institutions that they don't like. And so that's what's going on with the post office now. The first bailout package, the Republicans said they would veto anything that had money for the post office in it. Hoping, there's some predictions that the post office will run out of money come June, July, August, around that period. So there's a national movement now of many, many organizations getting together and demanding that relief be given to the post office. Bernie Sanders, has some very interesting proposals. Up until the late 60s, in many areas, people could do their banking at post office. You could set up post office savings accounts. you could cash checks. And so poor folks wouldn't have to go to these check cashing services that take a huge percentage or borrow money from them. So Bernie has proposed that the post office go back to that, being a place where people can cash checks and do some banking. And that exists throughout most of the world. Post office also serve that function. I think the latest bailout package contains $25 billion for the post office. But of course, the Republicans are saying that that'll never pass. So we thought we wanted to throw out to people the idea that we ought to do something that starts a discussion in the area around saving the post office. And we have a bunch of ideas. One of the ideas, a very simple one, is that we can make up stickers that say, save our post office. And every time someone mails a letter, they put the save our post office on the envelope. CPR, we could print those up, get them out to people if they wanted it. The other idea might be that we set a time and we hold some demonstrations at as many post offices in Franklin County as we can. And we figure we could do this safely. We don't need huge crowds in front of every post office, and we can be spaced out. But it'd be good to start, to show a unified approach to this. And I think especially for folks, in rural areas, people really depend on the postal service to get lots of things. So we wanted to throw those ideas and see what people think, knowing that there's a lot of issues that we're dealing with here. But I tend to think ideologically, if we allow them to destroy the post office and turn the post office over to private enterprise, which is what they want to do, it would be a big setback in the movement to have a country that's run for people, not for corporations.
Well, and if we want vote by mail, and there's no post
vote by
office.
mail.
It's sort of, yeah, it's kind of. David, I have a question for you. I like your ideas about what we can do locally. I can just see me up in front of my general store in New Salem, which is also our post office, with my little sign. And anyway, what connections do we have with people in other places around the country, nationally, or who are doing the same thing? Is there a national organized movement, I guess, is my big question.
To the best of my knowledge, there are lots of individual organizations that are taking this up. There is a national organization called Save the Post Office that I've been reading things for. I think we got to delve into it a little bit more to find what would be the right organization to also hook up with. Yeah. I know the American Postal Workers Union has been really pushing the idea that something has to be done. They're a pretty good union.
Okay.
This is Louise here. I think Common Cause has petitions going on too. And I can try to find a link to pass that around.
That would be good. I think Move On has a big petition going around the post office.
Petitions are great, and I think we should, do that work too. What was the name of the union you mentioned, David?
American Postal Workers Union.
American Postal Workers. And are our postal workers part of the American Postal Workers?
There's several unions in the postal system. There's a letter carriers union. There's a rural letter carriers union that many of our people who drive to deliver mail belong to the rural union. And then the bulk of workers who work in the post office belong to the American Postal Workers Union.
Thank you.
So
I'm going to post the link to the Common Cause petition in the chat. Sorry.
Great.
Do we know what at the federal level about any legislation that is actually happening? I know in the at least in the Congress, we know the Senate wants to kill it, but I mean, that's really where the money gets I'm not sure really what the Congress has to do with the post office, given that it's private.
Right. So what they've done is include in the latest Democratic bailout package, which has some good stuff and some bad stuff in it. But they've included $25 billion to go to the post office. At least that was the last figure I saw. Now, of course, the Republicans said they're opposed to any money going to the post office. But they have a little bit of an ideological problem there. They're ready to give all sorts of money to all sorts of businesses. But they want to officially exclude the postal system. So would people want stickers if we made them? Maybe we can start there. People would do that.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody who wants stickers, could you put that into the chat so we know who's interested? Just put a little note that says, I'd like stickers.
And if you think you could, if we figure out when and how to do a demonstration at the post office, if you could do that too, they'll put in the chat that you could do it. I think we'd try and do a general press release. They'll go out to all the news media on the day we're going to do it and have some basic information that would get to people. It might be fun to get out of doors and off the computer.
Yeah, I think press release, I like the press release versus, I like the stickers too, but my first thought was the stickers would be that the postal carriers would see them and they already know about this issue. And if to try to get to folks who are maybe not aware of what's going on, getting into the newspapers might be reaching a broader audience.
I
But
don't know that it's
that's
either or.
Right.
You know, we can
I
do
think we
both.
got to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yes, that's absolutely right.
And it would be nice for the postal workers to see the support from people from the stickers on the letters. So they know about it, but knowing that other people know about it and are supporting them would be good. I really like the idea of coordinating across the country if we can, or coordinating with others. So figuring out how to do that. I don't know, Joe, if there's any thoughts you have or anybody else about how we might make contact if there are lots of different groups who are doing this, but not necessarily talking with each other. How might we best think about organizing so it's whether it's just New England or whether it's across the country?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like I'm not as much tuned into the national level these days because I'm so state focused, but I could easily reach out to friends at Move On and see if, you know, Move On would be where I would go because that was my home, as you know, for a while. So I could see, you know, what national campaigns were brewing and then connect folks up, you know, FCCPR, you know, a representative from FCCPR up with whoever is the person who would know about a New England initiative. I also think about Indivisible. I wonder if Indivisible is going to throw down around saving the post office. I haven't seen that much yet. I also think about Free Press. They've often, you know, out of Northampton, they've often done these kind of civil liberties issues, right? This is an access issue and access into information issue. So I wonder if they would be in this. But if it would be useful, I'm happy to hit up a friend at Move On and see what's what.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
That'd be great.
Thank
Who
you.
should I get the person back in touch with?
David Cohen.
David?
You're the one that was talking, David.
David, you've just gotten nominated.
Yeah, I was thinking of John Weissman, who used to work for Job with Justice, who was president of the local.
Oh, yeah.
I was also going to hit up John too. He's an old friend. I can do that too.
He should be in touch with the various organizing around the post office.
Absolutely.
He's in New England.
Yes.
Mhm.
John's, yeah, that's great. Forgot about John. What a bummer. He doesn't come to our meetings because he's not in Franklin County.
I know. Does anybody want to dial John direct? I mean, I certainly can.
I can do that because I talk to John about single payer
Yep.
issues all the
Agree.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay. All right. Yeah, he's a natural. And I'll go to Yvonne. If I hear anything back, I'll get him to David.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything more on the post office that folks want to put out there? Other ideas? Okay.
Well, I want to just jump in and say that letters to newspapers don't hurt. And there are a number of people who may or may not be aware that this is going on. And so the more people who are aware of it. So my term pieces and linking it to the larger question of you know, trying to suppress the vote and the elections coming up, I think would get people to pay even more attention than they might otherwise, recognizing what's at stake.
Yep.
And recognizing what it's going to cost to mail things in the future if we lose the postal service.
Good point.
Right.
Yes.
And I think one thing we should be aware of, the Postal Service is under this constant pressure to keep rates for businesses for junk mail extremely low, and to keep raising the prices on personal and private mail. So maybe this could be the beginning of a movement where people start putting pressure on the post office to charge what they really should charge for handling junk mail, and not just keep raising the cost. I saw a thing from Trump who is demanding that the post office raise the rates on stamps. And I think that's just part of the old system. You want to make people hate something and be dissatisfied with it so it's easier to destroy. Okay.
I think they need to diversify their services. I mean, everywhere in the world, like you said, you go, to the post office for banking, and there's a tremendous opportunity there.
Right.
But I think, another reason that's being circulated for Trump's move is to stick it to Jeff Bezos so that Amazon won't be able to ship as easily.
But we could also go and buy stamps ourselves and and practice sending notes, handwritten notes to people, because it's really nice to get real mail.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, to Susan's point, the sticker that's going to get made, maybe we should have briefly, very briefly, of course, because it's a sticker, something about send mail. Support the post office, send mail, because I love getting little notes in the mail, and some people are starting to do that.
I do it all the time. And I also put a note in the chat that we could get rubber stamps and stamp on money, support the post office. That way it would circulate and people would actually see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything more on this before we move on? Okay, calling once. Okay. All right, so we want to talk about austerity, and Doug, why don't you just gonna lead that off, and then we can go from there.
Doug, before you say something, could I just say a quote that I just ran across that I wrote down? Because it's mass unemployment is a choice. Austerity is not the answer, but that phrase, mass unemployment is a choice, I think it kind of goes to the heart of the issue that we're dealing with. Thank you.
Well, and poverty is a choice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all a choice, right? So austerity, the basics, I think we're all probably pretty familiar with. And so it's not going to take a whole lot of lead in. But whenever there is economic uncertainty, one response from the Republicans usually, and though the Democrats are not always a whole lot better, is we can't spend any money. We've got to cut back on services, and the services they cut back are basically services for people. They don't ask how much is a bomb going to cost when they think about bombing. They don't cut the military budget. They don't worry about the deficit when they do things like, oh, I don't know, cut taxes on the wealthy, et cetera. So we know that this is all targeted. There's plenty of money. There could be more money if we needed money. But austerity is often the choice made by people who are coming from a political agenda. The question is, as money is very tight, and as the state gets less money from the federal government than it's used to, there's not going to be as much money coming around. And the question is, what do we do about it? How do we respond when we know that if austerity is the way, austerity means that there are going to be fewer supports for the people who need the most. And clearly the worst time to have an austerity approach is when the economy is shrinking, which is where we are right now. The time that austerity might make some sense is when the economy is expanding, but that's not what's happening now. So it makes no economic sense. It's a political move. The question is, what do we do about it? What are our options? How do we best act to push back or push for making sure that those in need have what they need? And that includes schools, it includes, well, you know who it includes. So let's start from there.
Comments?
I think we need to figure out a way to let it be known that people who want this austerity budget, like Mitch McConnell and other people, are just like sitting on millions and millions and millions of dollars that they get from having their hand out. And I just wish there was a way that we could figure out how for the American people to know how much money they're sitting on and what real pigs they are.
I've got a thought that I want to throw out to people, and we can see whether it's useful or not, or what people think of it. One of the things that I think is a problem that we come up against is that most people start thinking about the federal budget only in terms of their own personal budget, and that's pushed on them a lot, so that they don't understand that money can be printed, or that we can, that there are choices that the government can make. That it's kind of like, well, we just don't have it, so we've got to cut the schools, or we've got to, cut social services, or go after Social Security, or whatever, to make this up. So one of the things that I was thinking that we could do is not targeting specific politicos, but targeting the whole question of educating people in our communities about trying to think this issue through. So I've been thinking about something like a door hanger that would be, which side are they on? And then and on one side it would say, therefore most of us, if they support things like a moratorium on paying rent, or increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, et cetera, things that we know about. And then on the other side, it would say, again, which side are they on? And they support the richest 1% if, therefore, cutting taxes while building the Defense Department budget, or cutting school budgets and school lunch programs as a response to overspending, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is to start getting people to kind of ask the questions of what's going on, what are people saying to me? Because I think that we don't educate folks well enough at this point from our end of the spectrum. The left just doesn't. And then at the bottom of each would be something like, vote for a new kind of future for yourself, your family, your community. Not what we are told is the small bit that we can have, but let's use our taxes to support what most of us, not the 1%, need. So the idea is to kind of move that discussion. So I'd like to hear people's thoughts on that.
I'm going to jump in super quickly. So I think, first of all, I love this conversation, as you might imagine. I think there are two different conversations depending on whether you're at the state or federal level. And I know you know this. You know, with the state budget in the Commonwealth, would that we could, but we can't print money.
Right.
So, and boy, that would be a different conversation, right? However, we can borrow money, right? The governor can bond. And in fact, we're seeing some of that happen. So there's an IT bond bill that's going through, just past the House, that has food security money in it, $36 million in there, because we didn't have it in the general fund, and it would take too long. And so he's just put it in an IT bond bill. Now, do I think that's the best, most transparent thing to do? No, but it shows us that this is a governor who's willing to actually borrow money to be able to get it appropriated quickly and get it out to people. So we can borrow money, we can't print it. So we can't have a debt, but we can borrow it. We can change budget priorities, right? So we have long spent, I believe, too much money on our prison system, for example. We could begin to shift those budget priorities. Now that's slower because that has to come with policy, but still, you know, we should ask for that, right? Ask for budget efficiencies and cuts in those places. Say, for example, prisons that are not full these days, and nor should they be. Many of them are not. But you know, in order not to cut our universities or our community colleges, and then we can raise taxes, and that is something that, again, we're more constrained at the state level. For example, we have a mandated flat tax for income tax. But there is a big organizing campaign starting through Raise Up Massachusetts. And Raise Up Massachusetts is going to work with the MTA and Mass Budget on a set of new tax revenue, some of which is not so new, as you will see. You know, we've talked about it for a while in the Commonwealth. Some of it is new. And, you know, together they're thinking really rough. It's, you know, north of $1 billion, which still isn't the whole deficit closer, but could do something for us. So anyway, I think of those three things these days. And then, of course, we need to advocate at the state level for federal spending, which is that last, you know, could be a last gap closer for us. And so far, as you know, in the state, we are way far away from having enough federal funds in our municipalities and our state budget to avoid pain, real pain. And, you know, and I'm sure, as you know, this is the worst, far worse than 2008, and actually will exceed the Great Depression. So we're at 1 million people on unemployment right now in the Commonwealth, 1 million people. And that's in 2 months. And we haven't seen the second, third, fourth, fifth wave of unemployment come yet. You know, when businesses' loans dry up, or, you know, they've run out of their little bit of margin of funds. So I think all of these things are really necessary.
Okay.
Could I
I'd like to
about what Senator Markey said the other night in a Zoom call, which was that at the federal level, this discussion, we were talking about this, and he said what's going on down in Congress is that some of the people from other states who are Republicans are saying that Massachusetts is like not contributing, you know, to the, we're trying to like get more than what's fair for us and that kind of thing. In other words, we're being slammed both financially and politically in Congress from what he's seeing. They're saying, no, Massachusetts shouldn't get any of this federal money. It should go to our, you know, Republican friends.
Right. Steve,
Yeah.
I'd like to call
if I could,
Hernandez. He's got his hand raised. He's had it for a while.
Yeah. I just want to put out like a more revolutionary perspective. This is continuing the political revolution, right? The way I see it, there are some temporary fixes we could do that maybe make things a little bit more, the suffering a little bit less painful. But what's happening now is a very severe crisis in neoliberal capitalism, right? It's undergoing a very dramatic change. And I don't think that enough people are acknowledging it. I think it's a failure of the Democratic Party and a failure of the Republican Party. And we're not going to get any solutions that are lasting solutions from them. What's happening from a lot of positions of power is, as neoliberal capitalism is failing, worse alternatives are being put forth. So you get people who promote, like the rock star Andrew Cuomo. Let's get rid of education. Let's have Bill Gates do education. We don't have to have teachers anymore. We'll make these videos. We'll cut budgets. Maybe we don't have to have class size limits, because now you can have online, for the few classes that we could have in person, because most of it could be videos. So again, that, if you looked at NPR today, they talked about changing medicine permanently to have a lot more video conferencing. So a lot of changes are being thought of. And I go to these conferences as an engineer, and people are talking about this shift, which is a tech shift, which is really helping to more rapidly and effectively take resources, wealth, blood, sweat, and tears from the masses and funnel it to the rich. I think we need to do something that's much more revolutionary than legislation that we're going to get that's going to, maybe make it a little bit less fast for the wealthy to take money from us. I think what we should be thinking about are alternative structures, like what they have in Cooperation Jackson, Cooperation Humboldt, or in some of the other movements that you see internationally, like in Rojava in Syria, or in the Commune movement in Venezuela. And unless we do something that's much more revolutionary in thinking what type of different economic structure are we going to do, what different type of governance are we going to try to work for, it's going to get worse. That's my sense. So I had emailed David that I'm working with some groups locally in trying to come up with some alternative, some people who think about alternative economic structures and alternative ways of doing things that are not going to be a capitalist model, and that a better form of governments where it is more democratic. And I think that it's important that we start not restricting ourselves to operating within these constraints of what we think the economics and governance has to be.
Okay. More comments? Pat?
We have to do both. We have to do both. We have to work at the level that we, at our grassroots level and with our legislators, but we have to do both. And I just think we have the structures being built underway, the kind of structures you're talking about, food and economic and so forth and so on.
Pat Falvey, did you want to say something?
No, that's okay. So.
Other folks, other comments?
Yes, in terms of Greenfield, we just finished being on the council myself. We just finished wrapping up our budget, and it's really it's a budget that's unsustainable because we don't have enough money. We have over $1 million taken from the schools. We have in Greenfield, we have one of the lowest paying teachers. It's really shameful what's going on. And it's not that our government, we try and squeeze what we have, but we don't have the ability to tax either the large box stores, nor do we have enough box stores really to charge, which is a problem. We really need more money from the state and federal government. We have, every year our property taxes just keep going up and up, and it's not sustainable. We cannot continue to do that. But we have no other choice.
Other thoughts? Thoughts about actions?
Go, Dave.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do have to do both things. When we had that municipal socialism conference a year ago, was really to try and look at what we could do on a local level that wasn't aiding corporations and was providing jobs by controlling municipal broadband, municipal solar. In Franklin County over the years, we have many times tried to take over some of the factory buildings, factories that were shutting down. And we didn't have the access to money that we needed to do that. But I think in all our work, I think it's right, we have to start doing some educational work on the tax structure and how that in Massachusetts, along with everywhere, completely favors corporations and the super rich. And that trend has been accelerating. I always tied it with when Mike Dukakis began running for president, he started slashing corporate taxes. And along with saying that we couldn't try and stop factories from shutting down during the 1980s. But I think we have to, because we can't just talk in abstract about taxes and we need more money, because people react badly to that. We have to really point out who's paying taxes and who's not paying taxes. And in this state, big corporations don't pay much. So I think we got to do some work on that, along with these ideas of how do we set up examples that prove to people you can succeed and provide things for people that don't rely on corporations. It's one reason why I think saving the post office also becomes an ideological question that we have to do. But I think, and then the last thing I would say is we really do have to tie into a lot more of our work how much money is wasted in the military budget, and really look at the billions of dollars that are just funneled to corporations out of our pockets in order for them to invade other countries, but also just, overcharge for toilet seats. So I think we got to start some more work on that too.
I just quickly, in trying to think through this door hanger I mentioned, it costs about $12.8 billion to build an aircraft carrier, and $1 billion a year to maintain it, to keep it just going around. So if you think about that, and you think about Medicare for all, and the fact that we're talking about 300 some odd billion to do that, you can see right away it wouldn't take a whole lot if we mothballed a few aircraft carriers and did a couple of other things. That 350 billion is there. So we need to get that out there to people. Other thoughts?
Judy.
Yeah. Is okay?
Yes.
So I think both the Save the Post Office and the stuff about austerity, they're linked, right? So if people really look deeply into the question of why does Trump and the Republicans want to destroy the post office, everything is connected there, right? It's a public corporation, it's a publicly owned sort of corporation that works for us and could do all kinds of services for people without charging a profit. That's one of the institutions that with an austerity budget, they want to cut, same as, Social Security and education. So I think we could link those two campaigns together. That'd be great. Thanks.
I'd also like to see us do something around housing. I think it would be great if towns could seize foreclosed houses by eminent domain before big companies buy them up and turn them into condos. That would clearly be in the public interest for towns to take over these houses and either give them back to the people who are getting kicked out of them, or at least turn them into some kind of co-op. There's a lot of tenants work going on further south in the valley. Maybe that's something we could look into and connect to also.
Great idea.
Could I say something about the
Sure.
housing thing?
Yeah.
So the North Quabbin region, which is partly in Franklin County, has one of the highest rates of foreclosure in the state, or most any place. So there's hundreds and hundreds of houses. And we, like the North Quabbin Community Coalition and various, we've been struggling with what we can do about. I've been advocating in these meetings, we should just, have people go in and squat. But, the agency people get all like worried about regulations and stuff. So, but I mean, that's the extreme of what you're talking about, David, is to just take the houses over. What we found is we were trying to buy, a CDC was trying to buy some houses to rehab and put people in. You can't find out who owns them. You cannot. I mean, we've had tracers, months and months. You cannot find out who owns them. So that's why the squatting, I think the squatting solution works so well, because you don't care who owns it. You just go live there. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, other comments?
And there's some people on the call here who have not said anything. So do you have, if you haven't said anything, please jump in. We're smarter together if we're all participating. So if you have some thoughts or questions that might move us along, please do it. Please join in. That was a real showstopper.
Okay, don't want to start calling on people just to call on people, but if folks have thoughts on any of this stuff, that would be really good, because we're going to try to start to put together some real, okay, here we got an idea, what do you think? And we don't have those ideas yet, so we need, we're going to be working from what you give us as fodder for this.
This is Jo, and I want to say that I really appreciate, Steve, you especially, like lifting us beyond the structure that we have now. But in the structure we have now, so this is just an appreciation for that. But since I am inside the structure currently that we have now, I just want to say that I do think there will be a play in the Senate and probably the House for more revenue. And it's going to happen quickly. And so if there were folks who wanted to do some outside organizing with Raise Up Massachusetts or MTA or any of those groups, defying austerity through fair taxation that looks at more corporate taxes, more taxes on the wealthy in the Commonwealth, that will come, and it's going to come quickly. We don't know exactly when the budget fight is going to come, because everything's askew because of COVID. And so, there's many unanswered questions, but that's one area that, that could use some outside people power.
So Jo, are you talking about a revival of the millionaire's tax or something else?
The millionaire's tax is making its way through the constitutional conventions. That's on its way. There is some trepidation, although I don't share it, I will tell you honestly, of rocking the boat on the millionaire's tax and doing something in the short term that would potentially threaten the $2+ billion that we hope to get from the millionaire's tax. I don't think we have to worry about that. I think the people want the millionaire's tax, and we're going to get it. And maybe our vote margin will be a little slimmer by the time we get there, but I think we'll get there. And I actually think we're in such an emergency now. We need to do fair taxation sooner. So there's things like there's a tax called the guilty tax, which is, I think I talked about this last time. It's very appropriately named. And it's about offshore tax havens for Massachusetts corporations that warehouse funds offshore. That's looking like something like $800 million could come into the Commonwealth. So, you know, again, there's a lot of work, I think, that needs to be done by outside advocacy groups to get a list, at least this is what I'm asking for, a really concrete list of asks, so that folks like me get in the same room and go, okay, this is our 5 proposals, you know, so we're not fighting each other, so that we're organized and solid and aligned with our constituencies. So that's just one proposal.
Yeah. I have a proposal. How about, would people be interested in having a series of workshops from someone like Emily Cuano talking about solidarity economics and how to implement something here?
Love Emily Cuano.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Good idea. What you said, Joe, the things are going to happen fast, and we're talking around the whole austerity thing and trying to hit the rich, well, basically tax the rich, which is a lovely concept. I mean, tax them heavy. That's coming up right soon, is what I heard you say.
Well, our budget is late, as you know, because it was all pushed off because of COVID, and we're not in the structure currently that we can meet. So it's going to be compressed, and it's going to have to come in the next 2+ months.
So the bills that you're talking about that would tax the rich, which makes me happy, do they have names? Are they in committee?
They are not. No, these would be budget proposals considered as part of the budget. Some of these have been in some of these have been in committee before, but some of them have not. Some of them are new.
And do they have to go into committee once they get into it? They don't.
No, they can just be part of the budget.
Woohoo!
So we need to come up with some ideas. We got to feed some ideas to Joe that we can get into this.
That's right.
That's
right.
Very
That's
soon.
right.
Which we
Or
will.
or the people power on the outside fighting for the things that you like best.
Yeah.
I'd just like to go back to Steve's idea. If people could note in the chat that they'd be interested in being involved in some discussions with Emily or with other people, that would be helpful. So we've got an idea of what we're looking at.
Okay. Could he state again, Steve, who was it you were speaking about?
It's Emily. Go ahead.
Yeah, Emily Cuano, who does what's it called, the new economy movement or next generation movement, but she focuses on solidarity economics.
She's with the Wellspring Cooperative, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she is.
Yep.
Springfield.
So there's a lot of development of various kinds of cooperatives that she's really interested in. We've talked with her before, but I think it's good. It's a good timing to have that as part of our discussion here.
Yeah, because it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, now I was going to say she also has thoughts about time banks, local exchange currencies, and a lot of other models for local economics that would be alternatives to standard capitalism.
Right.
With respect to the legislation, why not push for a maximum wage, a maximum wage?
Mm-hmm.
Or a maximum ratio of lowest paid worker to CEO. Instead of being 8,000 to 1, it could be more reasonable, like, 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Other ideas, comments, questions around this austerity issue?
You know, I think that a lot of this is tied to federal, which we don't have so much control over. But the whole idea of looking at where our money goes, people have no idea.
Mhm.
I mean, we have 800 military bases around the world. We've got, the budget we've got. We've got the number of offshore accounts, not only in Massachusetts, of course, but across the country, how much money goes there. And people have no idea. I don't know what they do with that information, but hooking on to what Susan was saying of helping people to get more educated about where our money is going and is not going. It seems to me figuring out how to make that conversation not just about money, but recognizing that budgets are about values and saying, what is it we value? What is it that matters to us? And is where we're putting our money matching what we say we believe in? I don't know how to do that so much as to say I think we need to. And to recognize that the more we are unequal, when we become increasingly unequal as a population, it affects our health, it affects everything. So making connections that way, I think, would be a step.
Okay, other people, other comments?
Karen?
Karen?
Hey, just to talk a little bit to build on what Doug was saying, because I think that's a really good point, is that I think one of the reasons that people don't necessarily know where a lot of money is going or put thought into it is because I think when it comes to politics, by and large, people get much more invigorated by the social issues. They want to hear racially appropriate things. They want someone who supports, LGBT and gender equality and all those kind of things. And what a lot of people I think don't realize is that you can have, for example, many mainstream establishment Democrats who give lip service to all of those things that are like the hot button issues, but then still completely back Wall Street and corporations and the military and all of that. So the focus for people, we still kind of default to this like Democrats good, Republicans bad. And I think we have to be really careful about that because we have seen, especially recently, that there are many in the Democratic Party who have proved they are not on the side of the people. So this is not just a Republicans doing. I get that we have a Republican in office, I understand that, but I mean, the presumptive Democratic nominee, like when it comes to issues that we're talking about now, like is he really, with the people? Because I'm gonna say sure as hell no, and I'm being very polite. So I just think that we have to work to get the masses to regard the spending and the priority in the spending to corporations and Wall Street and war and all that as one of those sort of trigger issues, the same way we see sex and race, gender, that kind of thing. So it's not really an idea, but I just want to sew that up, and what Doug was saying just reminded me of that.
Well, Karen, I actually think that there's a key here of how do we connect up all of those economic issues to.
I'm sure Zach has something brilliant if you want to ask him.
Hey, Zach, what do you think?
I can't say I was thinking quite that big picture just now. It did occur to me in terms of locally, and I know this is going to come up against the usual funding issue, but we have a lot of unemployed people now. We're about to have more, even in our local area. We may also have businesses failing as their money dries up. So is there potential in that situation for us living in a place that is sometimes overlooked by larger businesses that might normally grab that? Is there an opportunity for us to put the, hopefully not too many, but probably some soon to be closed businesses together with the unemployed. Basically, is that an opportunity for us to get co-ops going on a local level? To use our weakness as a market for big business as a strength, I guess.
Okay. Great, thank you. Other comments?
One of the things I've heard talked about is getting government money to open restaurants and have the restaurants feeding people who are hungry.
That is possible now in Massachusetts with a recent executive order. Groups can apply for part of that 36 million that was going to be borrowed to do that kind of systemic food delivery, you know, activating restaurants and then delivering the food. So we may see that happening here.
Is there a specific way to apply for that money, Joe?
They're developing the guidelines right now. So if you ping me directly, I'll put my email in before I head out, but and you can certainly, as soon as I have them, you can have them.
Okay, thank you.
I also know that the Franklin County CDC was pulling together folks to talk about this stuff. So I think there may be.
So maybe there'd be money available to start some co-ops or work their own business or something.
It's possible. I'm advocating for the CDC, that Mass Food Trust that John Waite runs, I think so well. I'm advocating for the CDC to get a tranche of that funding.
Great.
So that the state, you know, the state will manage some of it, but I think they should get some of it out closer to the ground, especially in Western Mass. And I think John's done a really good job with the Food Trust, right? The orange work he did was really good. And anyway, there's lots of pots of money activated, really small pots that made transformative differences.
Great.
You guys, I have to run, but I'll follow up.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks,
Thanks so much, Joe.
Be well. So good to see you.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, we've got at most 16 minutes. We don't have to beat a dead horse. If people don't have things to say, we don't have to fill it. But I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak.
This is Louise. I'm going to sign off as well, but I thought I'd just take the initiative to send an email to Connecting Point to ask them if they might want to do a piece on the U.S. Postal Service.
Great.
Right.
So I'll see you all later. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louise.
Okay.
Bye.
Anybody else?
I would just add, I think the idea of putting out some literature on austerity, and I think we got to think about it, listening to everyone, you know, what that would contain. But I think we should be thinking seriously about doing something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, because as people said, you know, there are layoffs happening right now at UMass. We've had, I think there's a layoff of a town employee recent, you know, just during this. So I think there's going to be more of that coming up. And as all the unions get into negotiations, they're going to be hearing all the usual crying about tough times. So I think we should think about doing something and take into account what a lot of people have said here.
I just wanted to add that I was a delegate to the MTA convention that happened a couple of weeks ago over Zoom. It seems to me that they are extremely clear in their anti-austerity message. And in fact, my wife right now is on an all-union meeting from UMass that is dealing with the administration's proposals for furloughs and the like. So I would not want to reinvent the wheel, and I don't, you know, we're not a very big organization. I would like us to be part of a much larger movement, and I do think at this point in time, the labor movement in the United States is perhaps the place where you can galvanize the most power, such as it is, to have an immediate impact. Because a lot of the things we've been talking about models for alternative, that's not going to help us in the next 2 months if an austerity budget comes down. So there has to be a lot of focused, powerful opposition to what the government is getting ready to do to us right this minute. And it seems to me that Amazon workers, teachers, nurses, that's where at least a lot of the power on the left is right now.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I would just say, you know, when the coordinating committee of FCCPR, we've been thinking of holding more of these sort of discussions. And one of the topics was going to be on the labor movement and the organizing that's going on in this particular kind of organizing that's going on now. But if people, you know, like the idea of having these short chats on different topics, that's what we were thinking of proposing and trying to carry out. And it would fit in with the educational discussions on new economy and things like that.
I also think that one of the goals of that is not just to talk, but to think about real steps we can take. So having these conversations turn into people doing stuff in a coordinated and powerful way. So,
right.
Other commentary? Ideas on powerful stuff. Go ahead, Judy.
Well, now I'm getting reminded of the unemployed councils that we had in the early 80s, back in ancient history. There was something called the Reagan recession, which happened in early 80s, and there were mass layoffs in Greenfield when we had a lot of factory workers here. And so we formed an unemployed council, and we did all kinds of stuff. In fact, community meals was started by our unemployed council, along with in partnership with the churches. We got free classes for at the YMCA for the unemployed. We got free courses at GCC for the unemployed. We did a whole lot of stuff. We reduced the onerous, way you have to say, search for work. So we made it easier to collect unemployment. But the difference between then and now is that people went to an unemployment office and stood in line, and therefore you could reach them. You could pass out literature and talk to them. It'd be much harder to organize the unemployed these days when everybody has to, go online to apply and stuff like that. But that's an idea that we could, think of a focus on people that have lost their jobs or are losing their jobs, as well as the unions.
Great. Other comments? Got 10 minutes more and then we'll call it a day, unless people have no comments.
Well, I just think to let everyone know, so we'll take all the notes we have from all this and get send the sort of notes out to everyone and try and come up with some plans to actually do some action stuff.
Absolutely.
So it won't just disappear into the ether.
Well, in the notes, there was a thing that Move On is doing something around the post office for June 9th.
Right.
That was from Joe.
So we should think about that.
Yeah, I'd be very much in favor of prioritizing the post office right now.
Okay.
People have started.
It's part of austerity, right?
People have started doing car caravans, so we could do car caravans for a few of the towns with signs for the post office.
I like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
How long would it take to drive to every post office in Franklin County?
Oh, that would take a little while, Dave.
A long time.
But
your road trip,
Well, what else do we have to do? So,
Exactly.
Your road trip. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to have a date to work toward.
Yeah.
June 9th is not that far away.
No.
Right.
I
Okay.
also just think quickly that if we're looking towards June 9th as any kind of date to do something with the post office, if we could have some kind of our own flyer or literature or something by then, because honestly, that's, however we manifest this in the future, the quickest way is you got to get something in front of somebody's face as quick as we can. Whether it's around town, whether it's part of a caravan, both is a beautiful word, whatever it is, but there's got to be something visual to get people talking. We could also think about a social media element for this as well. So just want to throw that out there.
Oh, great. Great. Other ideas?
It'll be drafted, Karen.
Every time I preface all of it, every time I've said I'm not really good at like technology and Facebook, and Dave is always like, Karen, we'll do the Facebook group for the Bernie thing, everything. Never fails.
That's the problem, Karen, with not having gray hair.
Other ideas, other comments?
I think the social media idea would be critical.
We can get it all together.
Say again, Susan, if you would.
I was saying that I think the social media, if we have a really good campaign, and guess who else? Bob Armstrong is our media guy, and David Greenberg, they're the media people. We could figure out a way, because that's the way we reach the biggest audience.
Bob, are you being drafted?
I hear my name. Yes, I have posted a few things on our Facebook page, but I'm not I don't think of myself as a media guy. I do try to send out a lot of communication, but I don't know if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. I don't really do Facebook much, but I can write stuff. Letters to the editor.
We'll think it through. We'll think it through.
We could come up with some 30-second video. People are doing a lot of little videos right now and getting them on Facebook or, various other places. Or that we could, I don't know if anybody's seen that John Krasinski thing on TV, Some Good News.
It's great.
Like hook in with some of those people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got a YouTube channel. We can post stuff to our YouTube channel.
We can interview a postal worker.
Oh, there you go.
That'd be fun.
When I'm in the post office lately and I talk to the postal guys, most of them, they are not that nervous about what's going to happen with the post office. I view all of us are more nervous about the post office than they are.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah, it's puzzling. But talk to them. Go in the post office and talk to them.
Well, we may be able to get some stuff from the unions, and so we may not have to invent it ourselves. We may be able to get stuff. So we just need to, and then get it out. Okay, we've got about 4 minutes. What do folks want to do?
Well, I was going to say, people have been threatening the post office for so long. They hear it over and over. You're doomed. You're doomed. And it may be that it's just, the post office that cried wolf.
It's mostly Trump right now is, saying they're losing money, which is a lie, and he wants them to raise their rates, which is unnecessary. All the stuff Joe talked about, it's all true.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there other comments? If not, we don't have to pull this together.
All right, let's call it.
All right. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be getting back to folks with ideas. If you've got more ideas, let us know. You can get hold of David or me or the other David or or Doug, and we'll get those things forwarded and figure out some stuff.
Bye.
Okay, bye.